we ready for the jury?
Your Honor,
Okay.
We have one exhibit to hand out.
Okay, one exhibit. Oh, good. That means you're only down one, right?
That's right.
Okay, perfect. This is 1639. All right, thank you. All right. Go ahead and get the jury. 1639. All right, please be seated. All right, cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bania.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Bania, you understand that this case is about the op-ed in December of 2018, correct?
I understand this case to be about the allegations of domestic abuse, both as it relates to the 2016 and the republication of that, and the 2018 Washington Post op-ed.
You understand that Mr. Depp is only suing Amber about the op-ed from December 2018, correct?
My understanding is, I can base my understanding on my analysis, which includes the 2016 allegations of abuse.
That's your analysis, but do you understand what Mr. Depp is suing Amber for in this case?
Objection, Your Honor, to the extent it calls for a legal conclusion.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Did you read the complaint in this case?
Yes.
Did you understand that Mr. Depp was only suing for the op-ed, about the op-ed?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Depp was not suing Amber in this case from his complaint about the accusation she made in 2016, correct?
That is my understanding.
And you're not able to separate out how Mr. Depp's reputation was impacted from the op-ed in 2018 versus how it was impacted when Ms. Heard filed for divorce in 2016, correct?
That is not correct.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Bania, you took a deposition in this case,
Yes, I did.
and I was asking you the questions in that case. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you took that deposition on March 21st, 2022?
That is correct.
Okay. And you were under oath at the time, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were under oath to tell the truth, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you turn to page 83 of your transcript, which is on the 21st page of the...
I'm here?
Okay, and you see line 9?
Yes.
And I asked you, are you able to separate out how Mr. Depp's reputation was impacted from the op-ed versus how it was impacted by when Ms. Heard filed for divorce? And your answer was no, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you're not able to separate out how Mr. Depp's reputation was impacted from the op-ed in 2018 versus the publicity surrounding when Mr. Depp sued the Sun newspaper in the United Kingdom when a Sun writer called Mr. Depp a wife beater, correct?
Are you still reading from my deposition?
No, I'm asking you a question now.
Please repeat that.
You're not able to separate out how Mr. Depp's reputation was impacted from the op-ed in 2018 versus the publicity surrounding when Mr. Depp sued the Sun newspaper in the United Kingdom when a Sun writer called Mr. Depp a wife beater.
Objection compound, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You're not able to separate out how Mr. Depp's reputation was impacted from the op-ed in 2018 versus the publicity surrounding when Mr. Depp sued the Sun newspaper in the United Kingdom, correct?
My analysis shows that the web documents that I reviewed after the 2018 allegations.
Respectfully, this is a yes or no.
got
This
worse.
is a yes or no question.
Please repeat the question.
You're not able to separate out how Mr. Depp's reputation was impacted from the op-ed in 2018 versus the publicity surrounding when Mr. Depp sued the Sun newspaper in the United Kingdom.
That was not part of my analysis to carve that out.
And you didn't. You were not able to separate it, correct?
I didn't try to.
Okay, and so you couldn't.
I didn't try it.
Okay. And you understand that the article Mr. Depp sued the Sun over had the headline that said, "How can J.K. Rowling be genuinely happy casting wife beater Johnny Depp in the new Fantastic Beasts film," correct?
I don't recall if that's one of the articles I reviewed.
Do you know if that article came out before Ms. Heard's op-ed?
I don't know.
Now, you're not offering an opinion as to how the op-ed from Ms. Heard in December 2018 impacted Mr. Depp's career, correct?
Repeat that, please.
You're not offering an opinion as to how the op-ed from Ms. Heard in December 2018 impacted Mr. Depp's career.
Correct.
Okay. And you're not offering an opinion as to how the op-ed from Ms. Heard in December 2018 impacted Mr. Depp's reputation.
What I'm doing is
It's a yes or no. Are you offering an opinion to that or not?
My opinion is related to his public image.
You're not offering an opinion as to how the op-ed from Ms. Heard in December 2018 impacted Mr. Depp's reputation, correct?
I'm not talking exactly about his reputation, correct?
And you're not offering an opinion as to how the op-ed from Ms. Heard in December 2018 impacted Mr. Depp's public image, correct?
I'm offering an opinion that after the 2018,
It's a yes or
his
no,
public
sir.
image.
It's a yes or no. You're not offering an opinion as to how the op-ed from Ms. Heard in December 2018 impacted Mr. Depp's public image.
I am.
Turn to your deposition transcript, please. And if you go to page 74, which is on page 19. And you see line, are you there?
Yes.
You see line 1, starting on line 1. I asked you, and you're not going to testify how the December 2018 op-ed impacted Mr. Depp's public image. Answer, that's correct. That was your testimony at the time,
Okay.
correct?
Well,
That was
Johnny
your answer
Depp's
at the time, correct?
perception is
Sir,
a
that
negative
was your answer at the
perception.
time, correct?
Okay. Yes.
And that was your answer on March 21st, 2022, correct?
Yes, the date of the deposition.
So that was a month and a half ago,
Right.
correct? Okay. And you're not offering an opinion as to whether the op-ed from Ms. Heard made Mr. Depp more hireable or less hireable, correct?
Correct.
Okay. As to the articles that came up in the Google searches that you spoke about, it was you made the determination whether the articles had a, quote, negative connotation or not, right?
Correct.
And so that's just your view if an article had a negative connotation about Mr. Depp, right?
Yes, that's my opinion that they had a negative connotation.
Right. So if an article criticizes Mr. Depp's acting, for example, you're not considering that article as having a negative connotation about Mr. Depp, correct?
Repeat that, please.
So if an article criticizes Mr. Depp's acting, you're not considering that article as having a negative connotation about Mr. Depp, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, in your analysis of Google spikes, the highest spike in searches for Mr. Depp was in January 2004, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I guess you guys have it. Can you put up the demonstrative 1236? It's published. And can you see that, Mr.
Yes.
Van? Can we make it just a little bit bigger? Okay. So if I'm understanding you correctly, A is where the most searches were conducted for Johnny Depp, correct?
Correct.
And that's from January 2004, correct?
Correct.
So that was 18 years ago?
Correct.
Okay. And that was when Ms. Heard was 18 years old?
I don't know.
Okay. The top spike you mark as 100, correct?
I did not mark that, but Google Trends identified that spike as 100.
And where it says 100, you don't know how many people actually searched for Johnny Depp at that point, correct?
Well, the Google Trends algorithm marks the highest point of search as 100, and then everything is compared to that as a ratio or a percent. So if you notice that A is 100, everything else is lower than that because everything is being compared to that highest point.
Right, so you don't know how many people actually did the search for Johnny Depp in January 2004, correct?
Correct.
It could be 100 or it could be 1 million, right?
I don't know.
And you don't know if it's actually human beings doing these searches, correct?
As opposed to
bots or something like that.
I did not do an analysis to determine if it's a bot or a human being, but Google Trends is a tool that's going to show you during a time frame the highest point of search interest as 100.
Okay. But you don't know if it's humans, bots, my cat doing the searches, correct?
Objection asked and answered, Your Honor.
Sustained. Next question.
Now, in all of these Google spikes, Ms. Heard's op-ed never came up as one of the top 3 searches in any of the Google spikes, correct?
Well, that is correct because Google Trends is based on a search of a word or a name. And because Mr. Depp's name was not mentioned in that op-ed, Google Trends did not pick that up.
So a person does a search for Johnny Depp and the op-ed doesn't come up, correct?
In my analysis, the op-ed did not come up.
Okay. And in fact, the red dotted line all the way to the right, that shows when the op-ed was published on December 18th, 2018, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the searches are actually going down right after the red line, correct?
As opposed to the searches in 2004?
No. Look at the red line, look at the red dotted line, and you have two points here, right there. Those go down from the time of the op-ed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And isn't it true that the next, I guess, spike happens in March of 2019, correct? Right there.
Yes.
And do you know that it was March of 2019 when Mr. Depp sued Amber Heard in this case?
No, I didn't look at that date.
Right. You didn't look at any articles for this bullet, correct?
That's correct.
And since Ms. Heard's op-ed came out on December 18th, 2018, you would agree with me that by definition, all the spikes you analyzed before December 18, 2018 could not have been caused by the op-ed, right?
Correct.
So articles about Mr. Depp's drug use before December 2018 could not have been caused by the op-ed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you, in this chart, analyze only 2 spikes after the op-ed, isn't that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And the first spike you analyzed after December 2018 is V, correct?
Yes.
And is that January 2020?
Roughly, yes.
Okay. So that's January 2020 is over a year after the op-ed by Ms. Heard, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the next spike you analyzed was T, correct?
Yes.
And that was in approximately July 2020?
Correct.
Okay, so that was a year and a half after Ms. Heard's op-ed, correct?
Yes.
And again, none of the articles, and then for V and T, if I understand it, you then analyze the top 3 searches that came up, or the top 3 websites that came up after a search?
Correct.
Okay. And none of the articles you analyzed in those Google spikes after the op-ed were the op-ed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And isn't it true that the headlines of the articles over a year after the op-ed that you analyzed were about Mr. Depp suing the Sun in the UK for a Sun writer calling Mr. Depp a wife beater?
You would have to pull those articles back up. I don't have those in front of me.
Isn't it true that the article, and just so I understand it, V and T, that would mean there were 6 articles, correct, that you analyzed?
Yes.
Okay. And isn't it true that the article on February 26, 2020, the headline was, quote, Johnny Depp's disturbing alleged text messages read aloud in court as libel lawsuit begins?
Again, I don't have that article in front of me. I did produce those as part of my analysis. I don't have that in front of me, if you'd like to show it to me.
And you understand that that was about the lawsuit against the Sun in the UK, not about the op-ed, correct?
Again, I did not have that in front of me.
And another article that came up on February 27th, 2020 is one of the top 3 hits when you search for Johnny Depp. What the headline was, quote, let's burn Amber, texts allegedly sent by Johnny Depp about X read in court.
I mean, if you want to talk about these articles, we need to bring them up.
This is your opinion. You don't recall what articles you analyzed?
I mean, there's a lot of articles here. I didn't memorize each title.
There were 6 articles that you
Okay.
analyzed in the almost 2 years after the op-ed.
All right, can you bring those up and we can talk about them?
And on July 19th, 2020, the headline was, quote, Hollywood nervously awaits fallout from explosive Johnny Depp trial. You don't recall one way or the other whether that was one of the articles in either V or T?
Again, I know if you want to bring up my documents, I know document 9J, 9O, 9K, and 9M are mentioning the op-ed. Again, I don't have those in front of me.
And when you say mentioning the op-ed, does that mean that it just references that Mr. Depp sued Amber Heard in Fairfax?
No, it talks about how he's alleged to have abused her as it relates to the op-ed.
Doesn't it say, I mean, another headline from July 19th, 2020, the headline was, quote, Hollywood nervously awaits fallout from explosive Johnny Depp trial?
Objection asked and answered.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
You understood that was about the lawsuit against the Sun in the UK, correct?
Objection asked and
I
answered.
didn't ask about that.
Overruled.
Again, I would like to talk about these articles, but I need to see them.
And on July 19th, 2020, the headline was, quote, Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, all the nasty bits of the UK trial, and it's all nasty. That was in point T, correct?
Again, I do not have that list in front of me. If you'd like to bring that up, we could talk about it.
And you understood that was about the lawsuit against the Sun in the UK, correct?
I do not.
And on July 19th, 2020, the headline was, quote, Johnny Depp claims in the Sun he beat ex-wife, complete lies, court told. That was the quote, correct?
I don't see that here.
That was in your report, correct?
I would have to look at the documents again. I would be happy to discuss them if you would bring those up.
And then you previously had a chart that had articles from November 2020, correct?
I'm sorry, say that?
You previously had a chart that included articles from November 2020, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach on
Okay,
this?
sure.
You understood it was Mr. Depp's decision to sue the son, correct?
I don't know. That's not part of my analysis.
Now, you talked about Q scores in your direct testimony, correct?
Correct.
And you testified about 3 particular Q scores for Mr. Depp, right?
3 periods of time are the Q scores that I analyzed.
And you're not offering an opinion as to why Mr. Depp's Q scores changed, correct?
That's correct.
And Q scores can go up and down for actors for any sort of reason, correct?
That's possible.
You recall testifying that they could go up and down for any sort of reason in your deposition.
Yeah, they can go up and down for many different reasons.
So you're not offering an opinion that Mr. Depp's Q scores were damaged because of Ms. Heard's op-ed, correct?
That's correct.
And in comparing the Q scores from before the op-ed to the Q scores after the op-ed, Mr. Depp's Q scores dropped by 2 points, correct?
I don't have those Q scores in front of me, but if you're looking at them, I believe.
We can show the 3rd page of this demonstrative.
What was your question, please?
Mr. Depp's positive Q scores from B to C dropped by 2 points, correct?
Yes.
You're not an expert on statistics, correct?
Correct.
And even though you're not an expert, you have an idea about what the term statistically significant means, correct?
Yes.
And statistical significance is a measure of whether your findings are meaningful, right?
Yes, I don't think you need statistics to understand Q scores.
And you don't know if there's any significance to a drop in 2 points in positive Q score, correct?
Well, there absolutely is. When you're ordering Q scores on points at time.
Mr. Bania, go to your deposition, page 113, which is on 29.
Okay.
At 10, page 113, line 10, it says, so you're not offering an opinion as to the significance of a change in Q score, correct? Answer, correct.
Well, you're talking about statistically a difference. What I'm talking about is how we use Q scores in the industry. When you see a Q score dropping from a 31 to a 29, there's an issue. Is this somebody you really want to hire to endorse your products or your service? No, you probably not. You want to look into why, what is going on in the public to make these Q scores drop like that.
And you don't know exactly the significance between 5 or 6 points of drop in Q score, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, and it shows here that Mr. Depp's negative Q score actually got better from point B to point C, correct?
Correct.
So that's actually better for Mr. Depp, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you understand that Dr. Alan Jacobs reviewed your opinions in this case?
Yes.
And you understand that Dr. Jacobs reviewed additional Q score data, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can we please put up Plaintiff's Exhibit 889 at 117? Mr. Bania, do you understand this as a chart of Mr. Depp's Q scores from winter 2012 through summer of 2021?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to question the Q scores that are shown in this chart?
Like I said in my deposition, I've not received the actual data to build this chart, but I don't have any reason to not believe that this is accurate.
As I understand it, Q scores are performed on a celebrity like Mr. Depp twice a year, correct?
Yes.
So there's winter of a particular year, and then there's summer of a particular year?
Yes.
And the winter scores come out around February, is that right?
I don't have that information in front of me, but it sounds right.
And so would you know when the summer scores come out?
I don't.
Okay. And this chart shows, well, permission to publish this chart as a demonstrative, Your Honor.
Any objection?
I don't think this witness has laid an appropriate foundation for it, Your Honor.
He said he has no reason to question the Q scores.
I'll allow it as a demonstrative. That's fine.
And so this chart shows Mr. Depp's positive and negative Q scores, correct?
Correct.
And the positive Q scores are in blue.
That's correct.
Can you blow it up a little bit, Michelle? And the negative Q scores are in red?
Yes.
Okay.
Objection, Your Honor, may we approach for a moment?
Yes.
Mr. Bania, the positive Q score for Mr. Depp in the winter of 2012 is 42, correct?
It's in between. Yeah, it's in between 40 and 45.
Okay. And did you check the actual Q scores that Mr. Jacobs demonstrated in his report?
No, my analysis was a snapshot of time. I wanted to know Johnny Depp's Q scores directly before the 2012 allegations, the 2016 allegations of abuse, and after.
Okay. And you see here that the positive Q scores for Mr. Depp dropped from 42 in the winter of 2012 to 35 in the summer of 2016, correct?
Yes.
That's a 7-point drop, correct?
Yes.
And that's before Ms. Heard had her divorce filing, correct?
That's correct.
And that drop in Mr. Depp's positive Q scores could have nothing to do with Ms. Heard's op-ed, correct?
Correct.
And that drop could have nothing to do with the allegations Ms. Heard made after the divorce filing, correct?
Correct.
And would you agree that the positive Q scores actually start to show an increase for Mr. Depp after the op-ed? There's a decrease and then there's an increase?
Yep.
And the same for the negative Depp Q scores. There's a bit of a positive and then it goes down, correct?
Yes.
So really the op-ed had no effect on Mr. Depp's Q scores, correct?
As I mentioned, my analysis looked at the snapshot of time, and it shows that he was harmed, from before the allegations of abuse in 16 to after the op-ed in 2018.
You looked at 3 Q scores, and you could have looked at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I won't even count the 2021 scores. 18 Q scores, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And you looked at 3, right?
That's correct.
And that's what you're basing your opinion on, that the op-ed damaged Mr. Depp's Q scores?
Yeah, so what we need to
That's my
understand
point.
is Q scores
My question is a
do
yes or
go
no.
up
Your
and
counsel
down.
can come back and ask
what
you whatever
I
you want.
wanted to do
Your
is
Honor.
I wanted to
Sir,
analyze.
if you could just answer his yes or no
Oh,
question.
sorry.
That's fine.
I didn't hear your question.
You looked at 3 Q scores instead of 18 Q scores, correct?
That's correct.
And did you look at the Q scores at all after the Dan Wooten article that came out in April of 2018?
Objection, asked and answered, Your Honor.
I don't think I asked that.
Overruled, I'll allow it.
No.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, redirect.
Mr. Bania, on cross-examination, you were asked some questions about the fact that you made a determination about which of these articles had a negative connotation. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Is that something that you do in situations other than in your analysis in this case?
Yeah. So in non-litigation, when we're building brand monetization strategies, and especially if you're going to work with a celebrity or an athlete, you want to look at what's going on out there, about that personality. Because celebrities and athletes, Q scores can go up and down. You want to analyze the time and see what's going on out in the media. Do I really want my client to license in a celebrity that there's problems out there, or an athlete? So yes, it's important to look at this.
And I believe you were asked whether you're offering an opinion in this case about the impact of the op-ed on Mr. Depp's public image. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And I believe you testified that you are offering an opinion on that. Is that right?
Yes.
What's that opinion?
Well, the opinion is that he's portrayed in a negative connotation after that date.
And with respect to the Q scores that you analyzed, Mr. Nadelhoff was asking you about the 3 points in time that you looked at. Why, in your opinion, was it appropriate to look at just those 3 Q scores?
Yeah, as I was trying to explain, Q scores do go up and down. We're analyzing a period of time. We want to see what's happening right before an event, during that event, and if there's another event after that event. And that is our area of analysis. So that's why just these 3 sets of Q scores are the appropriate way to analyze this.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, is this witness subject to recall?
He is, Your Honor.
All right, sir, do not discuss your testimony with anybody since you are subject to recall, but since you are an expert, you are allowed to stay in the courtroom if you wish, okay?
Okay,
All right,
thank you,
you,
Your
sir. All right, you can step down. Thank you. All right, your next witness.
Your Honor, I believe we're calling Aaron Filati by deposition.
Oh, okay.
And, Your Honor, there are a few exhibits, there are at least 2 exhibits that I think we have still on those.
Could you put, I'm sorry, could you put your microphone on?
We approach, there's 2 exhibits that we have.
Okay.
To speak on.
All right, well, we're. All right, your next witness then?
Thank you, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Aaron Filati, also known as Aaron Borem Filati, and Ms. Hurd's counsel begins the questioning.
Okay, thank you.
Provide your full name.
Erin Filati.
And is Borum your maiden name?
Correct.
Okay. So Borum was your name, your last name in the 2014 to 2016 timeframe, correct?
That's correct.
Have you communicated with anybody else from Mr. Depp's counsel other than Ms. Vasquez?
Not that I recall. Oh, excuse me, I do. I don't remember his name. I'm so sorry. I feel like I spoke with Adam. I don't know his last name.
Did you speak to or communicate with Adam Waldman?
Perhaps. I don't recall his last name.
And do you recall when that occurred?
That would have been 2019 because I had a newborn at that time. So maybe May, June, July, something like that, 2019.
So this is a text exchange between you and Mr. Waldman?
It appears so.
Okay. And do you recall speaking to Mr. Waldman at all?
Yes.
And do you recall that when you were communicating with Mr. Waldman was Mr. Depp's attorney?
Yes.
Ms. Filati, you're a trained nurse, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you have any specialties?
Well, I haven't been working, like I used to, but previously I was trained in addictions and mental health.
And when you say addictions, are there specific type of addictions you were trained in?
All, but I primarily worked with chemical dependency.
And where did you receive training for addiction and mental health?
Different employment places, and then I became a certified registered addictions nurse.
You know who Dr. David Kipper is, correct?
Correct.
Did you work for Dr. Kipper?
Not directly, but he would hire the agency I provided nursing services for, which was Turning Point, I believe. So I worked under his guidance, but not specifically for him. Most of the time. There have been times where I've worked specifically for him.
Okay. When did you start working for Turning Point Nursing Services, or whatever the name of that company was?
I don't recall. My best guess would be somewhere between 2007 or 8.
And when did you start to begin to do any work for Dr. Kipper?
I believe 2014.
What were the circumstances that started you working for Dr. Kipper in 2014?
If I recall correctly, it would be for services for Ms. Heard.
Were you ever responsible for Mr. Depp's nursing care while he was under the treatment of Dr. Kipper?
I provided him with nursing care.
Exhibit 2.
So, Ms. Filati, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 2 to your deposition. And these are AHTPD 16929 through 16959. And is that the paper documents you have, a set of the paper documents you have in front of you?
Part of it.
The first page.
And the first page might have said at the bottom also K182.
Yes, I have that.
Okay. Do you recognize these as your, what are these?
These are my nursing notes kept for Ms. Heard. Yes.
And these are notes you created?
Yes.
Did you create these notes in the ordinary course of business?
Yes.
Okay. Were you trained in how to prepare these notes?
Yes.
Would you write these how long after the visit would you write up these notes?
Would depend. Sometimes I would keep notes on my phone that I would transfer to the Word document when I was in front of my laptop. And if not possible, I would do it as soon as feasible.
how often would you show these notes to Dr. Kipper?
I don't recall, at intervals, but I don't recall.
So if you look at the first page of the notes, the first entry is August 27th, 2014, correct?
Yes.
And you wrote RN has been hired to provide private nursing care for client Amber Heard, right?
Correct.
Right. And RN refers to you, correct? And an RN means registered nurse, correct?
Correct.
And throughout the notes, and you say this here, Amber Heard would be referred to as client or AH, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And Johnny Depp would be referred to as JD.
That's correct.
Would you agree that Mr. Depp and Amber would get into verbal arguments?
I recall a general sense of discord in the relationship.
And what do you mean by general sense of discord?
I just recall there being disagreements, reconciliation, and kind of that repeating pattern.
And would you be at times taking care of Amber because of this, the disagreements between Mr. Depp and Amber?
I provided emotional support. I was not present with her often, but it was available over the phone, via text, and sometimes in person.
Do you recall that in March 2015, Amber went to Australia to be with Mr. Depp?
Yes, I remember she went to Australia. As to the dates, I would have to look through documentation to ascertain the exact dates.
Okay. And on Exhibit 2, this is your note of March 7th, 2015?
That's correct.
And you wrote, client notifies RN via text of increasing anxiety?
Yes, I wrote that.
And then on 3/8/15, you wrote, RN received report from Debbie RN. Debbie being Debbie Lloyd, correct?
That's correct.
Do you recall what the report you received was on March 8th, 2015 from Debbie?
I mean, I'm just reading my notes.
Sure.
So to answer your question, no, I don't recall specifics of what the report would have been. I assume, based on this note, that would have been a phone call.
Okay. And it says, client will be returning to Los Angeles on March 9th, 2015, accompanied by house manager Ben. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Did you have an understanding as to why Amber was leaving Australia in March of 2015?
Yes. I don't know if this is the exact timing, but you know better than I, there was an incident in Australia and they had to be, Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp had to be separated. So Ms. Heard returned to Los Angeles per my nursing notes, and I believe Mr. Depp must have stayed in Australia.
What was your understanding as to why Mr. Depp and Amber had to be separated?
It's hard to recall specifics because I wasn't there or involved at the time, but became involved again. I remember hearing from other people that there was quite an argument between the two in Australia.
Do you have any understanding if anyone was injured during the argument between Amber and Mr. Depp.
Physically injured?
Physically, yeah.
Again, I wasn't present, so I'm only speaking as to what I recall during that time period and what I sort of remember hearing from others. And also, I just remember Mr. Depp's finger was injured. I can't tell you specifically which one, but I remember there was an injury to his finger.
Do you have any understanding as to how his finger was injured?
No.
And then, Aaron, you wrote the next note on March 9th, 2015 that says RN and CT in touch via text and phone calls after client arrived at 1500.
Yes, I wrote that.
Okay. And 1500, you're using military time, correct?
That's correct.
So that would be 3 p.m.
Correct.
Okay. And you wrote client expressed feeling, quote, sad, right?
Yes, I wrote that.
So do you recall what Amber was sad about at approximately March 9th, 2015?
I can't speak to the, I don't remember specifically, but I would assume based on my March 8th note, I would make the assumption that those feelings were in relation to the relationship issues.
You wrote client states she would like to discuss recent events between her and husband with RN in private tomorrow. Plans are made for RN to visit client at her home tomorrow.
Yes, I wrote that.
Do you recall the conversation you had with Amber regarding the events between her and Mr. Depp at around this March 9th, 2015 timeframe?
No, I don't recall specifics.
Do you recall anything in general?
I really don't. I'm sorry.
Did Amber express any fear of Mr. Depp at this time?
Don't recall. I don't see that in this note, so I can't speak to that.
And then the note for March 10th, 2015, you see that note?
I do.
You can take this down. We put up attachment 25, please.
Stand by. Exhibit 4.
Ms. Velati, I'm showing you a text chain between you and Whitney Hurd on March 23rd, 2015. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And on March 23rd, 2015, you texted to Whitney Hurd, Debbie just told me what's going on and to check with you. Is Amber awake or fall asleep? Do you see that?
I do.
And then Ms. Hurd wrote she finally fell asleep. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. Then you wrote, thank goodness, she must be
Sorry.
exhausted.
I'm sorry. Just to confirm, this is from Whitney Hurd, not Amber Hurd, correct?
As I understand it, it says Whit Hurd. Is that your understanding?
I assume. Thank you.
And then do you recall ever communicating with Whitney Hurd via text or chat?
That sounds familiar.
Okay. And you wrote, thank goodness, she must be exhausted. Do you want me to come to the loft or is she safe and sound asleep? You see that?
I do see that.
Okay. And then Whitney wrote, safe? Question mark? No, she's not. Kept saying she wants to kill herself. You see that?
See that?
were you ever concerned about Ms. Heard's safety as it relates to Mr. Depp?
So if she made comments to me that she was not safe, I would be concerned about her to ensure that she was safe. Yes.
Do you recall Ms. Heard making comments to you about her safety?
I remember a general sense when they, meaning Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp, would have arguments. She would often have her friends around her for support, but from a general, physical sense, she was always in a safe place.
And you mean in a general physical sense, she was always in a safe place. What do you mean by that?
Meaning she was always, not always, I should say, often home, often surrounded with friends. She had friends that lived right down the hallway from her, so she was always supported.
Was Mr. Depp friends with Marilyn Manson?
Yes, I believe.
Ms. Filati, I'm showing you what's marked as Exhibit 7, and these are texts that Mr. Depp produced between you and him. And I'm focusing on this text message of October 31st, 2015. You see that? Well, so this text message between you and Whitney is on March 23rd, 2015. You see that?
I do.
Okay. And if we go back to Exhibit 2, and I'll go back. Oops. There's no entry for March 23rd, 2015.
Yeah.
You see that? Not everything you did for Ms. Heard as a nurse is reflected in these notes, correct? And the next notes we have are November 25th, 2015. Do you know why there's a long period where there's no notes?
Yes. Perhaps I can shed some light for you and everyone on the relationship. When I was first hired to care for Ms. Heard, I worked full-time. I was assigned 24/7 basically. And after a period of time, I became more part-time and on call. And I was working with different clients at the time. So I would, how to put it, I would not be working regularly, but would also be available if an issue arose or a medication change needed or things like that. So I would assume that would account for this gap.
Why did you move from full-time to part-time?
I don't know the exact answer, but I assume that's not my decision to make. That's usually the client and or treating physician.
Okay, so that's the first page of Exhibit 2.
Yes, thank you. So if you can you go down to, it's about the third paragraph, a little bit, yes. Per report from JD, which refers to Mr. Depp, Debbie, RN, and Dr. Kipper, client AH, which is Ms. Heard, has reportedly been experiencing increased anxiety and agitation recently and has had several outbursts of anger and rage. From what I remember, when I was involved in the case, it was to help assist Ms. Heard with some emotional issues, anxiety issues, in attempts to assist, in layman's term, kind of calming things down a bit.
Do you recall any examples that you knew of anger and rage showed by Amber?
I do recall seeing her very angry. I have to refer to my notes. It was in London, so that would have been 2014. And I believe it was in reference to a violating incident where her phone had been hacked and she was quite upset. I saw her angry at that time, and other times I don't recall.
Were you in London with Amber at the time?
Yes.
And how was Amber showing her anger?
I recall loud, kind of elevated voice, yelling, crying, quite upset.
Do you recall receiving a call from Amber around December 16th, 2015 regarding this argument between Mr. Depp and Amber?
I don't recall a specific phone call.
Would you doubt that a phone call occurred if you wrote it down in your notes?
If I wrote it, I don't doubt that it occurred. I just don't have memory of it.
And now you see the note on December 17th, 2015?
Yes.
And you wrote RN in contact with client to notify her that she'd be able to deliver medications to her home. RN waited at door for several minutes after knocking. Client greeted RN at door looking disheveled. Hair appeared unbrushed. Client appeared weepy and sad. Posture is slouched. Client told RN about argument with husband. RN offered emotional support, but reminded client that RN could not stay as was on duty with another client and was only visiting in order to deliver medication. Per client, she had not had contact with husband since altercation. Client had visible bright red blood appearing at center of lower lip. When RN made client aware that she was actively bleeding on her lip, client stated it was from injury sustained in the, and then it's blank. You see that? And then we can keep going down in the argument between her and her husband, and that it continues to bleed actively. You wrote that?
Yes.
And then you also wrote clients also states that her head is bruised and that she lost clumps of hair in altercation. You wrote that?
I assume so. It's in my notes.
Okay. And then you wrote, RN briefly looked at client's scalp but was unable to visualize the hematomas client had described. You wrote that?
Yes, I would agree.
And then you wrote, RN encouraged client to be seen by physician Dr. Kipper or go to emergency urgent care for thorough assessment. You see that?
I do.
And then you wrote, client states she will contact Dr. Kipper tomorrow. Client is supported by friends Rocky and IO who will be staying in client's home with her. You wrote that?
I agree, yes.
Okay. And then on December 18th, 2015, you wrote, client states she went to Dr. Kipper's office and was assessed by NP Monroe T as Dr. Kipper was out of the office. You wrote that?
Yes,
And NP stands for nurse practitioner.
that's correct.
And you understand Monroe T stood for Monroe Tinker?
Yes.
You recall if Mr. Depp ever forgot to take any of his medication?
At a specific time or ever?
In any time where you were working with him?
I would say vaguely, yes.
Ms. Bellotti, I'm showing it's been marked as Exhibit 11 to your deposition, which is Bellotti 96 through 106. You see that?
Yes.
You recall receiving this text message, right?
I have a vague memory of this.
Do you recall if you spoke to Amber after you received this text message? Or at any time after you received this text message around May 21st, May 22nd, 2016?
Are you saying a phone call or just?
Yeah. Phone call.
I don't really recall.
It could have happened, you just don't recall one way or the other?
I would agree with that.
And you received this picture from Amber?
That's correct.
What is this picture of?
I was just asking if you could scroll down. Could you rewind it just a little?
Ms. Heard.
And does the picture show redness under Miss Heard's eyes?
You can answer as a lay person if she has such an opinion. If you have an opinion one way or the other, you can let them know.
I'm not an expert, so, I mean, there's color on her face in different areas. I don't know what's what.
And you received this first picture of Amber at 12:36 a.m., correct?
That's the timestamp there.
And you received another picture at 12:36 a.m.?
It appears so.
And who do you see in that picture?
Also Ms. Heard.
And you received a third picture of Amber at 12:36 a.m.?
Yes, it appears so.
And is that third picture of Amber?
Yes, that's Ms. Heard.
And you received the fourth picture of Amber at 12:36 a.m.?
Then yes.
And this fourth, I think just so it's clear, the fourth picture is of Amber, correct?
That's correct.
And you received that at 12:36 a.m.?
Yes, that's the timestamp.
And these are pictures of Amber's face, correct?
Yes, that's a picture of her face and neck.
Do you recall do you recall receiving those pictures?
Like I said, I have a vague memory of this, but I don't specifically remember receiving it.
Okay. Do you know if you reported these pictures or what Ms. Heard reported to you to Dr. Kipper?
I would assume that if any information was presented to me, I would have contacted Dr. Kipper.
And do you know how you would have contacted Dr. Kipper?
No, I depending on the date, time, I would sometimes call, email, text.
Do you recall if you wrote nurse notes for this incident?
I don't recall.
Do you want us to look at Exhibit 2?
It's the nursing notes?
Yeah. Why don't we do
Sure.
that? So there's notes for May 11th, 2016. You see that?
Yeah.
And then the next notes for May 26th, 2016.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know why you didn't include notes for May 21st, 2016?
I don't know.
And on May 26th, you wrote, client texted RN requesting Ambien as she states she's suffering from insomnia due to stress and anxiety. Client reports, quote, having the hardest week of my life, end quote. You wrote that?
Yes.
And you wrote, client states she cannot deal with the negative media publicity she has received surrounding the divorce she requested from her husband, JD. Dr. Kipper notified Ambien 10 milligrams, QHS PRN 14 ordered. Per Dr. Kipper, client is encouraged to make appointment with Dr. Kipper in office to be assessed. Client did not respond. You wrote that?
Yes.
Ms. Vladi, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 12 to your deposition, which is Vladi 114 through 119. You can take a look through them. It appears to be notes of when you were Mr. Depp's nurse, as opposed to Ms. Heard. But feel free to take a look.
That's correct. I think these are my nursing notes in relation to Mr. Depp.
So client now is Mr. Depp, correct?
That's correct, because these nursing notes are in reference to Mr. Depp. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And in the nursing note for April 23rd, 2015, you wrote that Dr. Kipper will introduce Rosalind Phillip to Debbie RN and clients Amber H. and Johnny Depp. Debbie RN will assist in coordinating session appointments between clients and Ms. Phillips. Do you know if Mr. Depp and Amber ever saw Rosalind Phillip?
I don't know.
And at Pilati 117, it shows notes for June 7th, 2016, correct?
That is correct.
You wrote, the following medications were approved per Dr. Kipper to be given to the client, and then there's a list of medications. You wrote these notes, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And did you understand that Mr. Depp was taking those medications as of June 7th, 2016?
For this nursing note, it appears that he was taking these medications listed.
And then there's a nursing note for June 26, 2016. You see that?
Yes.
And it says, you wrote, client is going through divorce with wife Amber H. and is dealing with the loss of his mother, passed away 1 month ago. Client was provided with the divorce request from wife AH 3 days after mother passed away. You see that?
Yes.
And you wrote that?
Yes.
So was it your understanding that Amber asked for a divorce?
This note says that Mr. Depp was provided with divorce request from Ms. Heard, so it appears she was the one requesting the divorce.
Right, and you wrote, next, client states he was not aware AH wanted divorce and expresses confusion regarding AH's desire to terminate marriage. You wrote that?
Yes.
Is that what Mr. Depp told you?
I would assume if I wrote it in my notes.
Then you wrote, client's divorce has been highly publicized and wife AH has been accused him of several character damaging allegations, including domestic violence. You wrote that, correct?
Correct.
Was this on did you write this based on information Mr. Depp provided you?
I don't know. I would assume that I've had discussions with him regarding this, considering that this is a nursing note for Mr. Depp.
Did Mr. Depp tell you his character had been damaged as of June 2016?
I don't recall. I have to go by what my note says here. So it alludes to that's something that he had discussed.
And you see where you wrote, client states he felt helpless previously but is now angry at AH and wants to clear his name. Mr. Depp told you that?
Again, I don't recall for sure, but I would go back to my nursing notes because those were written more at the time. So I would assume that he and I discussed that.
Okay, farther down, you wrote, RN assisted client in processing feelings and encouraged client to continue utilizing individual therapy as he responded well to RN's use of therapeutic communication. You see that?
Yes.
And you wrote that, correct?
Yes.
Then you wrote, client is resistant, stating, quote, I don't want anyone like Amber's wife therapist. He has only made things worse, end quote. You see that?
Yes.
And you wrote that?
Yes.
and where it's quotes, I don't want anyone like Amber's therapist, he's only made things worse, that was something that Mr. Depp told you?
Again, as I have it in quotations, I assume he made that statement.
A little farther down, you wrote, throughout RN's visit, client maintains attention and is actively participating in conversation. Client consumed 3 vodka drinks during RN's seven-hour visit. Client did not eat during visit and drank water only with several prompts from RN. RN educated client on possible interactions between prescribed medication and alcohol. Client verbalized understanding but stated, quote, right now I need a little alcohol for all the bad things I'm going through, end quote. You wrote those lines?
Yes.
Say the document speaks best as to how many drinks Mr. Depp had?
Correct.
And that Mr. Depp drank 3 vodka drinks during your visit?
That's what my note says.
Then you said RN provided one-on-one emotional support and encouraged clients to limit and or abstain from alcohol and illicit drugs. You wrote that?
Yes.
Do you recall why you told Mr. Depp to abstain from illicit drugs?
No, but I did, and not just with Mr. Depp, but in my line of nursing, provide education always with any medication clients are on and contraindications.
Do you know if Mr. Depp ever took any illicit drugs during the 2014 to 2016 timeframe?
I don't know. I didn't witness him using any illicit drugs, so I can't speak to that.
Your Honor, at this point, the questioning switches over to questions for, by counsel for Mr. Depp. That's all right with us, Your Honor?
I'm sorry, let's go ahead and break for the evening. We will see you in the morning. Just do not discuss the case and do not do any outside research, all right? And we'll have the rest of this tomorrow morning, okay? Thank you. All right, so we'll see everybody at 10 o'clock tomorrow, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.